Greetings, you viewers and fellow Final Fantasy fans. This is Final Fantasy Fan 012, and welcome to episode 7 of Comic Studies. And as celebration for Superman's 85th anniversary this year, we are doing Superman for All Seasons by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, with the colors by Bjarne Hansen. Now, this was released. Wait, hold on. When does it say this was released? Ah, crap. I don't think it even says when this was released. Dang it. And I think it was somewhere in the 90s when this came out. Was it?
Take your
This
time.
yeah,
You have all the time in the world.
this came out in 1998. Yeah, this came out in 1998. This was a 4-issue miniseries, as this book is entirely into 4 chapters. And this was made right after Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's success with 3 Batman books: Long Halloween, Dark Victory, and Haunted Night. And we will cover these 3 sometime in the future. But for right now, this would be the last episode of Comic Studies in a while. So that means it's not going to be gone forever. It's just going to be laid to rest for a while. But in a celebration for Superman's 85th anniversary, even though I would cover any one of these, I feel like covering this one since, well, this is one of the best Superman stories for any self-respecting Superman fan. And oh yeah, where are my manners? I'm here with Wolftain Media over here from the UN Spacey Wolf Squadron.
What's up?
And Wolf, what was your history with this book?
I have no history. I'm a newcomer.
Oh, this is your first time knowing about the story?
Yeah, you don't have to walk me through it, unfortunately.
Okay. Very well then. but for now, let's get into the story. And we start off at the very beginning of the very first chapter of the book, which is in spring, because this book takes this is a 4-issue miniseries, and the 4 chapters of in this book go from all the seasons in a year, starting from spring and and ending in the winter. And in the spring, we start off with this is Clark early as Superman. So this is we see Clark in Metropolis. We don't see his origins
There's
in
gonna be a
Metropolis.
theme to this. I see. Nice.
Yep, and it's already in the title of this book. That's why it's called For All Seasons. And so we don't see him as an infant being sent by his real parents off to off Krypton and to Earth, being raised and was then found. He's already there as Clark in Smallville. In fact, he's just about to be graduating high school, Smallville High School, and we first see him on the farm actually, and he's trying to call out to his father, see if he needs any help. And oh yeah, the captions in this book, they're all we don't really see in the perspective of Clark at all. Instead, the story has got 4 narrators in all 4 chapters. And in the first chapter, it is narrated within the eyes of his adopted dad, Jonathan Kent. And while Clark is already proud to be in Smallville because, well, it's his home, but he's already made his choice into trying to make something of himself in Metropolis. And while his adopted dad he still loves his son dearly, but he is a bit hesitant, or actually not really as hesitant, but what's the word for it? Like maybe that choice, but like still is hesitant, but yet still wanting to let Clark be his own man when he's trying to live a city life instead of his life on a farm. And so then he and Martha he and Martha Kent are actually having this discussion as what will become of Clark by sometime in the future when he actually does go there. But they also discuss about his powers that they know about it because they know about the fact that he's already an alien because that's how they found him. And so, oh, we got some new people in the chat. William Silva, how you doing? And how you doing, 12 Day? And so now, the next day we see Clark already graduated high school alongside with Pete Ross and Lana Lang, and they're already going out to the restaurant where they all hang out in. And so then Clark is just now discovering, but suddenly Clark is just now discovering his powers because he's now beginning to see an X-ray vision of someone through of people through a wall, which is actually the barber shop that's right next to the restaurant. And so then he just leaves the restaurant for a while just to see what's happening now, and that he goes to get a actually just goes to get a haircut to the barber shop, but suddenly the scissors cut because his hair is also indestructible. So Clark is already realizing his own powers. Then suddenly, he goes to his own home, which then
Suddenly,
his
Superman 4 doesn't sound as ridiculous as the whole hair thing.
yeah. Though even if he does get a haircut, I wonder how he would suddenly do that himself.
I mean, just like the Superman animated series way, laser vision.
When when he shaves.
Yeah. Well, you have to always like for somebody, you know, you would think his parents would have to just kryptonite cut it.
If they even have access to that, if they would even know that.
I mean, they should know, right? Oh, wait, this is the beginning, so they didn't know about the kryptonite yet.
Yeah, like even then I'm not really sure if they actually um do know about his weaknesses, like his weakness to kryptonite and magic, as well as radiation from a red sun. Anyway, so then Jonathan and Martha suddenly see Clark out in the fields as Clark is beginning to feel a bit scared because he's starting to realize that, oh yeah, because now he's starting to realize about his powers. And Pa, his pa Kent tries to go up to him, goes up to talk to him, and he's trying to reassure him that everything else is fine. But and then he embraces him again, makes sure everything else is, reassuring him that he's all right, and he tells him the truth about everything. And he always tells him, no matter what, no matter who you are, you always will be my son. But suddenly, there's a storm coming. There's already a tornado, and it's not like how it's played out in Man of Steel. And so then Clark suddenly gets lifted by the tornado, but he somehow comes out unharmed. Like he already gets lifted, but he's not even unharmed due to how invulnerable he is. But suddenly the tornado is reaching the small town. It's actually heading straight to the gas station. But then suddenly, Clark is starting to realize that he can fly. So he's realizing more of his powers, and he tries to get a single man out of the way because it's actually from a gas station, and it's about to right before the explosion sets, and he tries to get him out of there fast and possible. And while he does save him, but the town is suddenly destroyed. So then he tries, but then suddenly his home is also destroyed too. And luckily, Jonathan and Martha Kent are hidden down underneath the bunker underneath the house, because that they realize that there's a tornado. And but suddenly Clark goes back home and sees if Jonathan and Martha are okay. And they were worried sick if they were. He was worried sick if they were suddenly killed in the tornado, but luckily they're fine. They were worried about his son, too, with this after this all happened, and they're glad that he's all right. and then he embraces them, making sure that they're okay. But now suddenly he's realized, and then he tries to rebuild the entire home by himself, and he's now starting to realize that with all these powers, I know I could do something good. And suddenly this he actually meets a man named Pastor Lindquist, and he's starting to hold on, because I know I've read this book. Let's see here. This is where he start. This is where he's starting to realize that he can actually use his powers actually for good, thanks to the advice from him, and actually tells him about anything like what defines a man, basically. And while yes, that would sound like that would be Jonathan's whole thing to do, Jonathan's whole thing, what defines him, but Pastor Lindquist would also be um also what defines Superman, part of Superman, because of course, and we do see him a bit later in the final chapter. And so then uh, later at night, Clark comes to invite Lana because Clark is about to show Lana about his powers, and now he suddenly takes Lana flying, and it's a bit similar to the Lois and Superman flying scene in the first Superman film, because they actually start flying around Smallville, and they're actually starting to, which is actually one of the most romantic scenes in there in the film. This may already start to feel familiar if any of you actually have seen the film. And so then after after the flying, Lana asks, "Will you ever come back?" That because Clark is already about to leave to Metropolis, and Lana is asking, "Will you ever come back?" And Clark reassures, "Yes, I will come back." And Lana and Clark share a kiss. Then the next day, Superman gets dressed up in a suit and a case, and he's also got a case filled with his luggage. And now he's about to be ready to leave Smallville to Metropolis, but then he says goodbye to Martha and Jonathan.
I'm always around.
Mm-hmm. And this is when this is where the credits I really have to give to Bjorn Hansen because of this shot here of the story, because the colors look beautiful. These are gorgeous colors in this book. They easily fit this aesthetic
Reminds
for
me of All Star
Superman.
Superman.
Absolutely, yeah. All the brighter colors. Everything else is already so bright, especially when the next page we see another two-page spread of Metropolis, which is an entirely Art Deco style city, which as Metropolis should be.
Yeah, exactly. Retrofuturism, if nothing else.
Yeah.
I'm always associate Metropolis with. I've always associated Metropolis with of course animated DCAU's Metropolis.
Oh yeah.
I've always liked the retrofuturism of the DCAU universe.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
then now Clark is now to Metropolis. He now got the job at the Daily Planet, and it's here we meet the two other characters that Clark would then, or actually three other characters that Clark would meet throughout his life in Metropolis, where he meets his boss Perry White and meets his two co-workers Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane. And Lois Lane is constantly would be calling Clark Smallville because of course that's where he's from.
Hmm.
But suddenly, we then see that she's suddenly on a date with Luthor until suddenly Superman comes in. Clark, we see a blue streak come in, which is now Clark's already Superman.
Hmm.
And Lois is now trying to get the deadline because now she's suddenly trying to get the story because now the whole town is really familiar with Superman. And then we also get this iconic scene from this comic where a kid is somehow on the roof, somehow, maybe it's Arya's apartment. But he's trying to catch the ball, or no, he's trying to. There's a cat on there, and then suddenly he accidentally falls. He then suddenly trips over, but Clark saves him.
Oh, classic. Say the cat.
The boy suddenly falls off the building, but then Superman catches him, and then puts him back up, and then he also gives back his cap because his hat also fell off. And then the kid compliments him on his costume, says, "Cool costume." Then Clark says, "Thanks, my mom made it for me." Because it is made from the costume is made
Hey
from the same.
man, that's a sick suit, man. Excuse me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, not entirely exactly that, but pretty much. And then suddenly we then see a four we then see four panels of Lex Luthor, which for some reason he has a respirator. For some reason, I'm not really sure why, really. And
The world may never know.
and so now he's already starting to have this bitterness already towards Superman because now he's starting to feel like his opportunity where he has is now taken away from him because of Superman. And we will see why in the third chapter. Because now we go into the next chapter, which is in the summer.
Ooh,
And
where we are right now.
there is no chronological like month or day where we're actually in like a specific calendar or even a year from this, but there's our huge time jump from where we see younger Clark in Metropolis, or no, in Smallville, to suddenly where we see him in Metropolis during the summer. And now we actually got a new narrator for this chapter. This time in the perspective of Lois Lane, which is entirely narrated like she's actually trying to write the story. And everyone is starting to recognize Superman. Everyone's beginning to love Superman. It's Superman's growing popularity. And then we also see one part where he's actually trying to stop a missile from launching onto Metropolis. Then he stops it and then yanks it straight into space. And then as soon as we do, we then get another beautiful shot of Superman in space looking at the Earth.
Reminds me of Superman Returns.
Oh, wait, like where he tries to lift up the Fortress of Solitude out of space because that's where they found it and he got weakened from all the kryptonite.
Well, mostly of him floating near the atmosphere of the Earth, listening to all the people speaking. I still
Hmm.
love that shot. I really do. I really love that shot where he's just like just stationary, and the way how Brian Singer tilts the camera the way it does,
Mm-hmm.
or at least how the cinematographer tilts the camera.
Yeah.
It's like that's a I've always every single time I think of Superman, sometimes I think of that shot where he's not really looking down upon us. He's looking towards us to see who's in need, and he
Mm-hmm.
just shoom, flies right to where he's needed.
Yeah. And oh yeah, actually, I do like to note one thing out from how much this art style definitely does fit Superman because back when they were doing Batman stories, which easily what aesthetics do you think fit for Batman?
Dark,
Like what color
gothic,
aesthetics?
macabre.
Yeah, and this is basically that aesthetic that it fits with their three Batman books. And as for this one, this easily fits for Superman, where it's all
Oh
bright,
yeah,
almost yeah. And then suddenly, we see more of Luthor growing as Superman suddenly growing in popularity. Luthor suddenly growing more and more bitter towards Superman. Even with all the aquatic shots, this is also beautiful with this Bjorn Henson style of coloring. And a lot of people, one thing to that I do like to note is that a lot of people, as one's major critique with Superman's design in this book, is how much Superman looks so broad, even to like his square jaws, like almost in proportion to his neck, almost like the what do they call it? Like the thumb head or something.
Yeah, thumbhead.
Yeah.
Kind of like what he was designed to look like in Superman versus the Elite, the animated.
Mm, yeah. Because that's always the thing with Tim Sale is that he always likes to exaggerate like one certain part of the character. For Superman, it's his size. Like as Clark, he suddenly looks awkward, and yes, he does stoop down a bit to make himself appear a little smaller. And so then, and you may look a little obese since like his business suit looks so broad we don't really see much of his muscles because he's supposed to look awkward. But when he's Superman, his muscles do show. And so then, and he actually is way more different than what he is when he's actually Clark, as Clark should be. Because like when he's actually Clark, he's trying to keep up this facade to make him appear as awkward, just still as Clark what he is. Because Superman and Clark are one and the same. Because of course we know this. Clark is basically his human side, but then the human side is also fueled by Superman, if that makes sense. Like because he's Clark. Clark is basically who he is before he was Superman. Because the Superman is basically an extension of himself. You know.
Agreed.
And so then when they go to them with their other stories, like with their Batman books, the one part that Tim Sale always exaggerates on Batman is a square jaw, especially that we see in the DCAU is that square jaw. Or like when he's drawing the Joker in the Batman books, what's the one part that the Joker is known for? What's one part the Joker is exaggerated for?
His smile.
Exactly. In fact, his smile is so big it even very much rivals the Grinch. So much so he looks the Joker in those
Pour
books look
me
like he's got
one,
yeah.
Mr. Joker. Wait, Mr. J.
There
You
yeah.
really are here. You have spiders in your smile. You have termites in your whatever.
In fact, the smile is so exaggerated the Joker's got crocodile teeth because he's got so much teeth.
Mm-hmm. That's too much teeth for one man to handle.
Yeah, he's got crocodile teeth. And so then suddenly um back to this book. Um there's
Oh,
already
I finally, I'm finally able to. Sorry, off topic. Now I know how to use my Tenno
oh yeah.
as a
Um
special.
yeah. Wolf's playing Warframe just to keep himself occupied for this.
Well, I don't mean to be that way, but no,
It's okay.
what you're talking about is not boring to me either. I'm listening intently,
Yeah.
and it's good stuff, really good stuff. Just hearing you speak on that,
I mean
really
it's
really
alright.
good stuff.
Yeah. Anyways,
Like especially the part where you mentioned about Lois and you mentioned about Lana and the flight.
mhm.
But we'll speak more on that when we get to the end, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is your show. Keep going.
Alright. So suddenly Luthor then suddenly comes in to his hometown, or no, not hometown, his home building, the LexCorp building, which, in case if it weren't obvious enough as to where it's at, if I could find the exact page, it's that L right there, the building that's in the shape of an L.
Check out the ego on this guy.
Yeah, I mean, and I thought in the DCAU they would check they still don't even know Bruce is Batman because Wayne Tower is the shape of Batman's cowl. It's like meanwhile in the Hall of Batman.
Right? But like I said, like people underestimate how dumb people are. Unfortunately, they've always it's like it's the same thing with this whole Superman thing. Do you recognize any of your friends in glasses at all? I doubt it. When
Yeah, because I mean, Clark changes his eye color anyway, especially when he wears his glasses.
really?
Yeah, like he stoops down a bit to make him appear smaller. He speaks in a bit of like a more of a lower tone voice to make him sound like his more natural voice, especially when he's Superman. Because his
Mm-hmm.
natural voice is actually Superman, and he changes his eye color um to make him not actually appear like from his natural eye color. Because that's again a Superman is an extension of himself. He had to change his own facade as Clark so that people wouldn't even know that he's actually Superman, so that people wouldn't even know that he's Superman, not even his own enemies.
Exactly.
So then Luthor then suddenly goes back to LexCorp Tower, but suddenly Superman comes in and the military are suddenly even seeing this and and if you've seen the pilot episode of Superman the Animated Series, the very first episode in the first season
Right.
of Superman the Animated Series, this might sound a bit this might be a bit familiar to you because Lois was trying to get the whole part of the story of this and as to what's going on, but suddenly she gets captured. She's being held at gunpoint because Superman caught them, and so then this one man, they all surrendered because Superman actually caught them, and Superman's trying to hand them over to the authorities to send them all away. But suddenly one man refuses to surrender, and he's got Lois held hostage at gunpoint, and Luthor is there too because he's already there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Take your time.
because the whole thing about Lois is that everyone likes to say that she's the damsel. Well, yeah, people do need saving from time to time. She can pretty much hold her own, but she's what drives Lois is like it's almost this pathological need to actually get the story because
Mm-hmm.
she is a paragon of ethics, especially when it comes to journalism, and that's why Superman loves her. And so then when she's trying to get to the bottom of this, because she's a reporter to the Daily Planet,
Damn right.
and so trying to get to the story is this pathological need in order to know basically everything just to get the whole story, which in the process that's why she gets caught and why Superman has to save her.
Once again, damn right.
And so then as soon as someone tries to the same man tries to shoot Lois, Superman then catches the gun quickly before he could even fire, and then actually Luthor is trying to negotiate with the same man who's already pointing Lois at gunpoint, and Superman is trying to tell him, "Wait, we should negotiate with this instead of, you know what? No, he's trying to kill her." So then Superman catches it, then crushes the gun, and then suddenly now Lois suddenly her, which then gives Lois the opportunity to finally break free from her captivity from this guy by stomping, using her heel to actually try to stomp on his foot, and then hits him right in the rib cage, and then chops him, then just chops him back in the neck. Because again, Lois can't hold her own, and so now after that, Luthor tries to tell her to be, why don't we go on another date? But Lois already found another interest into Superman because I was like, sorry, but I already found interest in this other guy who's standing right next to you.
Sassy
Be-
Lois.
yeah, because Lois to Superman, Lois is kind of more of a riddle to her because
You mean Lex Luthor?
to Lois, Superman,
Oh wait. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
yeah,
I misheard that.
yeah, you're all right. Um, but we will get to Luthor eventually in the next chapter because to Lois, she views Superman as more of a riddle because a while ago Metropolis was just very crime ridden. Not necessarily as to like Gotham, how Gotham is.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, excuse me. But but suddenly now, and she's already trying to get the view as to like how this all happened, just to get to the drama of it all, because you know how the news likes to get all up in arms of the drama, and so now suddenly she views cynicism as Lois's defense mechanism originally. That is until suddenly Superman came in, because everyone in Metropolis, with a few exceptions, a la Jimmy Olsen, everyone else is already at each other's throats because Luthor made Metropolis basically his own, as basically his own that he built from the ground up. Usually, or maybe he just took it over as to try to make it like his own land, like almost like a sovereign ruler, that sort of thing. Like he's trying to like see if he could try to make Metropolis like into much more of a utopia, but he's already in it for himself. Again, we will see a bit later, the next chapter. And so,
Quite, yes.
and so now suddenly Superman comes in, and every who is this beacon of hope, and he's already standing up for everyone. And now everyone is looking towards Superman for hope that they all need. And now Lois is suddenly interested into Superman because of this. And so now this grows a more bitterness towards Luthor, as now not only the whole city is now looking towards Superman instead of Luthor, but now suddenly Lois is now taking interest into Superman. And so then Superman takes Lois back to the Daily Planet, and then suddenly she rides in an elevator, and yet suddenly Clark is already Clark is already there, right on time, when when Lois hits to the exact floor where they are all at. And so
Of course. Of course.
and but then Clark suddenly comes in and goes like, "Oh, hey Lois." Again, in a bit of more of an awkward way, because Clark is always trying to put up this awkward facade. And then it actually says this. Actually, read this whole scene. It's, "Oh, hey Lois. Anything going on? Anything going on that I should know about?" "Only the whole wide world, Smallville." Oh, by the way, did you get aboard to the submarine anyhow? How'd you get aboard to the submarine anyhow? What? Because now suddenly she's realizing, how does she how does he even know that? But then brushes it off and says, "We all have our own little secrets, Clark. I'm sure you even do." And so then she doesn't like view it in a more bitter because she's trying like more bitter like leave me alone, but more so as just sassy, as she always is. But but suddenly she's caught by surprise. It's like, how the heck does he even know that? But she doesn't connect the dots right away into knowing that Clark is Superman. But soon after, Clark goes back to his apartment with groceries in his hand, and now he's back to his own room. And oh yeah, because this is the his room in his apartment. Um, if I can actually get it frame it right. Uh, this is his whole room right here in his apartment. But suddenly, we do see his room in Smallville when Jonathan and Martha were talking into about Clark realizing that he is a bit different, and hesitant whether or not if they might actually if they should tell him. If I can find the right page. Here it is. Because this is his room uh, back when he was in Smallville, and
Yep.
it's in this
Nice.
similar in a similar pose on his bed, but yet a different layout. Because this is a whole thing that we are seeing a lot throughout this book, because of the cyclical nature of all the seasons in the year. We see this all in this book. In fact, that same scene where Jonathan and Martha were talking at night. And oh yeah, Clark was overhearing about this too because now Clark is suddenly to realizing about his own super hearing, his enhanced hearing. We see this picture with Jonathan with his eyes suddenly with the whole stars, and we will see it a bit later, and I think it's in this scene here. Oh yeah, it is. It is in this scene, because after that, Clark suddenly goes back to Smallville just to visit his parents just to see how they were doing. Because of course he would be, because this is home. Or in other words, like a little bit of his fortress of solitude, which we don't actually see in this book, but it's just his own human, basically just going back to his own home. Because what defines Superman is his humanity. And this is, and Smallville is his home, and this is his wholesome upbringing as to make what as what makes Clark who he is, especially his whole reason that fuels him to be Superman, his entire to be Superman. Because this whole thing, the whole theme of this book is, can the only way that we're ever actually gonna, uh, can we only connect to our past? Can we actually um, continue on towards the future, or actually continue on with to the future? You know, and so, and once again, oh wait, no, he doesn't make Pastor Lindquist sometime here. Um, oh wait, no, it is Pastor Lindquist. Wait, no, it is, or is it? Because it said that he passed on. Because it's this scene here. It says because someone's already gardening, and it's a similar facial features and the facial structure, the same hair especially. And then he actually knows Clark and says and actually says this, and he asks if it is Pastor Lindquist. Wait, do we actually? Because we do see him a bit later in the final chapter. I do want to make sure. Oh wait, no, it is Pastor Lindquist. Okay, it is Pastor Lindquist, just to see if he's doing all right. And he asks if Lana's all right, and well, and he says, like, I've known the Lang family for years, and not having anyone else, anyone in this house as at his house, Pastor Lindquist's house, just seems well wrong. But then Clark asks, is she gone? But then he says, she's been gone ever since you left. She's been gone ever since that you left for Metropolis, because Clark was Lana was originally thinking that Clark was going to marry her, still living in Smallville, but Clark already made his own decision that he wants to make something of himself living in the city. And so now Lana, in the process of doing that, decides to do that for herself. And we're not really sure as to where she's at in this book, because it never makes mention as to where she is. And so then, because now she's left ever since Clark left for Metropolis. But then he does meet one of his other classmates that he has not seen in quite a long time, Pete Ross. And then he
Good
goes to
old
the,
Pete.
and then they both go to the same bar that they, or not bar, the same restaurant that they went to since they were kids. And they still actually had a chat with, and they still had a chat. And he asks, how's Metropolis treating you? And he says, well, treating well. And they have been catching the papers of the Daily Planet that Clark has written because Clark is very because Clark everyone in Metropolis, everyone else that Clark knows in Smallville, they are connected to Clark because they've known him for very much ever since he was a boy. But now Clark is going to go back to Metropolis, but before he does, he has a chat with Marla. And the Jonathan Kent scene that I mentioned earlier, where we see a starry, the star sky in his glasses, we see the same thing with Clark in this panel right there.
Awesome.
And so now Clark goes back to Metropolis, and now he goes back to being Superman. And suddenly there's a chemical lab that's on fire, and now suddenly we're introduced to the Lex Luthor's robots for the very first time in the story. And suddenly they're trying to put out the fire, and Superman tries to come in and says, "Is there anyone in there?" And then all the Lex bots are saying, "LexCorp has been situated to take control of this situation." But then Clark says, "Why don't you tell this to your boss?" Because suddenly he sees someone that's in there, says, tries to push that out of the way because. So then, yeah, he pushes the Lex bot out the way, goes straight into the fire, blows out the fire, and sees that someone is in there. And so now, and she's already passed out on the ground, and luckily she's not even set on fire. So then Superman suddenly uses his cape because his suit is fire resistant, and actually sends her straight to the ambulance, and actually, and then suddenly she wakes up and says, "Bless you," like God bless you, because she views Superman as more as this like angelic figure, and we will see a bit as to how this will happen in a little bit. And oh yeah, Superman suddenly puts out the entire fire with the tornado, and this beautiful shot of Superman in a tornado.
Ah, sweet. That's the colors are really popping out on that one. The
Absolutely,
red,
because
the yellow,
mm-hmm,
especially the highlights on his suit. Oh my goodness, that shadow,
yeah, yeah, because again, Bjarne Hansen did the coloring of this, and the colors in this are gorgeous.
popping out.
Mm-hmm. And so
Got
then,
good eye for
mm,
contrast. But continue.
okay, I'll just. I was about to let you finish, unless if you're finished saying something.
Yeah, I am. Just go ahead.
Okay. So then he puts out the fire, and then Superman then scolds the Lexbots, and say the Lexbots were saying, "We had this under control. Why'd you have to step in the way?" Then Superman scolds them in, into saying, "Why don't you go home? A woman almost died because of your carelessness. If it happens again, I'll hold Luthor personally responsible for this." Because again, Clark is trying to. Clark believes in humanity, and he always has, thanks to the wholesome upbringing back in Smallville with his parents, his adopted parents. And he always stands for humanity because he puts the world before himself and would like to see the brighter future of um of the whole world into believing in hope as the way he does. Into and that's how because if it, yeah because if there's trying to show them a way out He's trying to show them a way out by being this beacon of hope. I will stand for hope. I'm just here to help you guys so that now you can actually, yeah, I'm actually here to help you guys, but everyone, I'm just here to help, really. But I will be, and the reason why I'm going to be helping you because that's what I'm here for. Just to, um, wait, actually, that, wait, am I thinking of Superman's Secret Origins? Because Clark believes in humanity, that they'll actually start to believe in hope because they look to him. Whereas Luthor, Superman wants humanity to believe in a brighter future by actually believing in hope. Whereas Luthor is trying to build a future to knowing exactly what he's been went through, trying to get back at others who've wronged him. Because Luthor is in it for himself. And so now the Daily Planet gets the story, and speaking of Luthor, we actually do see him coming up the stairs, and we actually see this woman that Superman saved. It turns out, um, her name is Miss Vaughan. Her name is actually Vaughan, and she views Superman as this angelic figure. And how is that so? Well, that's why. She's basically made an entire shrine dedicated to Superman. And because of this, Luthor sees the opportunity to get back at Superman. And thus we enter the fall, which now in this and now in this story is entirely narrated by Luthor, Lex Luthor. Which actually, before we actually get more into this, Wolf, do you have would you like anything to say before I continue with the next two chapters?
Everything's fine. Just keep doing your stuff, man.
Okay. All right. So now, and now we see with Luthor's side, he views he views it his narration as more like a love story, pretty much, not in like a more um wholesome way, or even like more so of a darker love story, because he views Metropolis, which is the city that he built from the ground up to rule, as a scorned lover because now they found interest in Superman. But then suddenly Luthor is suddenly caught. But then suddenly, of course, one of his agents, gets him out. And then suddenly everyone is now trying to gather up on trying to get the whole story as to how he even got out, like what's his opinion on Superman. And even Lois is trying to get in on the action. It's like, why does he hate Superman so much? But then Luthor just says, not now.
Where do you get off hating on Superman? I swear, you just always talking about how Superman is Superman, that Superman is bad, is awful. What do you get off on talking bad about Superman? What's so bad about Truth Dutton an American way?
And let's just say Luthor just has a completely different worldview as to compare it as how he is.
Mm-hmm.
And so now Luthor flies away in his private chopper, the LexCorp chopper. And now he goes back to his own home. And now he tries to get himself cleaned up after taking a shower. And then suddenly he has someone else try to help him shave with a straight razor. But then someone accidentally nicked his chin. But then, but then she says, "I'm sorry that I did that." And then he says, "It's all right." But then he forgives him, or no, but then he forgives her, actually, because it is a woman doing it. And so now Luthor is suddenly staging a plan as to try to get back at Superman. But then suddenly, just like in the first episode of Superman the Animated Series, where Superman is standing right outside of Luthor's window, with his arms crossed and saying Luthor says, "What are you up to now?" Or actually, in that episode, it's just saying like, "I am watchful. I have my eyes on you, in case if you do anything." But then in this context in the story, he's actually doing this. He's actually doing this as like, "What are you doing now? Like, what do you have planned?" Because he already caught him so many times, and he's starting to say, "Why don't you just leave me alone? Just why don't you leave me alone? Because this has nothing to do concern with you." But then he said, but then Superman just says, "Very well, but but I warn you, I am watching you." So now, um, and then we actually do see what Luthor actually has planned, and we see Miss Vonnegut actually just bounce straight down into the chair, actually watching a giant screen with their eyes open, Clockwork Orange style, and actually just watching all of Superman as this is all just so demented. It's another two-page splash of this. In fact, the entire caption is just says, "Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. Superman, who can, who can, oh, who can change the course of mighty rivers, bend steel with his bare hands. He fights. He fights for truth, justice, and the American way." But then it all repeats, as if she's like being brainwashed. And then Luthor says, "Is are you comfortable?" Un- Says, "Are you comfortable?" But then she's completely silent, and then says, "I'll take that as a yes."
Dastardly and just dis- just despicable,
Mm-hmm.
just wrong. Like
Absolutely.
how low could he ever go? Oh, don't ask that question.
Meanwhile, we are about to see it, because now, back at the Daily Planet, we then see Lois trying to get all nosy into Clark's desk, and because he's writing a letter, because the last initials are being LL, because he's referring to Lana Lang, and she thinks she's referring it to herself, Lois, but then Clark comes in and is saying, "Lois, that is personal." But then she already catches. So then, so now she's already suspicious as to like saying, "Okay, well then what is this? Who is this for then? Surely it can't be referring to me," because she's already being feisty towards Clark. It's like she's. But then Superman answer or Clark answers honestly. It says as Lana Lang. So then
The
suddenly,
truth will get you in trouble, Clark.
and we actually do see that, because now Lois is now saying, "Okay, so I apologize to you as just getting up in your business. So then why don't you apologize to me as being um
A quick aside, that's one thing that always bugs me about Marvel writers when it comes down to Clark or at least Superman in general, where if Lois had to ask, you know,
hey Leia.
if
Hello.
look on Leia, if Lois had to ask Clark has he been unfaithful, he would tell her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he would be truthful.
Mm-hmm.
He would even be truthful about maybe there might be somebody there that might strike his fancy, but at the same time he's still committed to Lois.
Yeah. And he's just only writing the letter to Lana Lang just to see how she's doing. But then it
Not
says
this
this.
whole they're telling he's telling his version of the truth. Oh, screw that, man. He's
Mm-hmm.
being very like that's the thing that a lot of people in general, not just mind writers, can't grasp. It's the fact that people do tell the truth.
Yes. So then, but then she then tells Clark saying, "How many people do you know have the initials of LL besides her?" And so in some way, then says, "So in some way, you should be apologizing to me." But then suddenly, she starts coughing, and then suddenly she passes out because everyone else in the Daily Planet suddenly is being poisoned, but Clark somehow isn't because, of course, since Clark is not really human and he's not really affected by um whatever's going on now. But also we do see and everyone else is actually having this fever, and then oh yeah, we also see two separate panels of Luthor saying truth, justice, in the American way as way of mocking Superman, because we are about to see a bit later. So now Clark then suddenly gets ready to become Superman by going down the elevator shaft, and everyone else is just passed out. Not only everyone on the Daily Planet, the entire city. And so now Clark's trying to find about the whereabouts. And in fact, he even stops a train from almost about to be crashing. For almost about to be crashing in case if it ever goes too fast. He has to. So then he actually stopped it, and now he goes to find. So then Superman goes to Star Labs, and someone in a hazmat suit actually is protected from all this. And so Clark suddenly asks of what's going on, and everyone else in the air is actually. Then she asks someone, everyone in the air is being poisoned because of a virus, and then Clark asks who could even do such a thing, but then asks, "Have you spoken to Luthor?" And then Clark is just has a scornful look. It just says, or not a scornful look, but says, this entire look says, "I knew it. It had, or no, not that he knew it, not that he actually knew, like it had to be him of all people." So then he goes to LexCorp and see what he's doing and says, "What did you do?" And yet suddenly he also asks, how is he not even affected? Because he's quarantined the whole building. And apparently, and I assume the entire cast of the entire staff at LexCorp is even there too, because he's quarantined the entire building. So now Clark's Clark then, or no, Luthor offers Superman, gives Superman an offer. Says, "I can give you, I do have the cure, but it's through someone." And then we see Miss Vonnegut, the Superman fan that we actually see that has been brainwashed. She's now taken on this identity of Miss Poison, which I think, hold on, because now like saying like fortunately there is hope, like she's the only cure because she actually has it. So now, see, I think it says yeah, Jenny Vonnegut. That's where it's actually her full name, and I think it says her name somewhere because I thought it did say it. Toxin. That's where it is. That's her new name. So now she then puts on the gas mask just so she wouldn't be infected by this, and she puts them. And because she can't fly, because of course she's human, Clark then suddenly, Superman then takes Toxin straight to the skies to make sure to get the cure up in the sky, cure in the air, so that way everyone else is cured from this. But suddenly, she's poisoned because the gas mask that she has, that's supposed to protect her from this virus that's already polluted straight into the air, that's now affected her because that same poison is now affected straight into her, and now she dies. And luckily, everyone else in Metropolis is now cured.
Yeesh.
Now everyone in Metropolis is now cured, but suddenly now she's poisoned, and Clark couldn't even save her. And now this is part of Luthor's whole plan as an attack on Superman's confidence as a hero, saying, and now saying you took as basically as a revenge as to getting back at him for stealing the entire city and stealing my girl away from me because you're here. And you say that you're about to bring hope, you failed to save one. Because Clark didn't even know what to do on that. Now, actually, get into this part here before I talk about this. Now he says, "Why don't you go back to wherever you came from before you fail us all, like you did this woman?" And then we see Clark is now back in Smallville, and then he goes back to his own home. Then Jonathan and Martha are saying, "What's wrong, Clark?" And then he says, "I think I need to go back. I think I need to stay here in Smallville." Now, Professor Geek had said this one time in a bit of a recent stream. I forgot which one it was. I think it was in the office hours, I think. But the whole thing of aspirational heroes that they can fail, because the whole thing about aspirational heroes is they don't have to have some complete moral failing or make some huge mistake in order to be the hero, because what drives the aspirational hero to be good is from a general goodness within their heart that's in there from the beginning, such the case Superman from his upbringing into being Superman. Now he can fail, they can learn, not that they because they absolutely can. That's part of human experience because we learn new things every single day. And so he's just been duped into thinking um that I failed to save her, that was already my mission. My mission is already to save everyone as best I can how, but I failed to save her to I've saved everyone, but I failed to save her because he was duped by Luthor into saying into doing this. And it's not that to say that should I not be saving people for a while, because he knows that's already his mission. He's already saying what he's already doing is now should he not be Superman for a while? Like his image of being Superman is actually causing more harm than being giving hope, you know? And so now we enter our final chapter in Winter, and we have one more narrator in the story. This time is in the perspective of Lana Lang, who we have not seen in quite a while, and we do actually see her again. And now, the boy that Clark saved on the rooftop is now trying to play baseball there. He's actually throwing the snowballs, but then suddenly, Lexbot then suddenly shows up and says, "Citizen, you should stay inside, for his for it's for your concern and your safety." And then because now Luthor has control over Metropolis again, because now that Superman's gone.
That's some totalitarian shit right there.
Yeah. And then suddenly we see Lois in the Daily Planet with Clark at his absent desk. The desk is completely absent, and now that Superman's gone, um, Lois then suddenly
You
tries to
mean
connect the
vacant?
dots. Yeah, yeah, completely vacant. Um, Lois is then suddenly asking Clark, "Where are you?" Because now Superman's gone, Clark is suddenly gone, and then suddenly sees that there might be a connection between the two, and is saying, "Unless." But then again, she brushes it off and says, "Nah, that's completely stupid. That is the stupidest idea in the world." Even though that is true, she then just brushes it off because those two are completely different because they act different. But then we go back to Metropolis, and then we see Superman, or no, Clark and Lana then suddenly sharing a moment back in Smallville, because now Lana's back in Smallville too, as long as Justice Clark came back. And so those two are suddenly having a chat, and they go back to the same place where they all hung out as kids alongside Pete Ross. And then suddenly, um, now Lana suddenly has a chat with Martha, and is saying like, "Is something's wrong about Clark? Because Clark has still been a little bit
Don't let
down."
him kill Martha.
Not like that.
No.
Anyway, she's asking. Anyways, Lana's asking Martha, is that Clark's been
Was checking
feeling a
Leia's
bit,
pulse.
still feeling a bit down on the dumps as of late, is asking what's going on, and then hold on, um, oh yeah, because they do know that wait no, not just yet, because they pretty much, I think they probably do already know that Clark is Superman. They very much do know. Actually, yeah, they do know because she made the suit, and so they're trying to wonder what's going on, but then suddenly uh, Chief, a policeman named Chief Parker is suddenly at the door, and there's already a terrible storm that's coming, and there's already a flood that's already flooding around all of Smallville, and so now he's trying to make sure to at least try to stay in your homes, make sure everything else is fine, and make sure you stay safe. And then they ask, "Can?" Then they ask Clark, "Can you do something about this?" But then she says, "I actually read this. Actually, no, nah. Yeah, they're trying to know this whole trying to read this whole scene as to Clark. He's still a bit hesitant because of what happened. And oh yeah, yeah, man, Luthor is one petty person, absolutely. Because that's the contrast between Luthor and Superman. Is that Luthor's because Luthor's cynicism is a contrast to Superman's idealism. Idealism versus cynicism. That's the whole thing about Clark versus Superman versus Lex Luthor.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. And so now Clark then suddenly goes up to his room. He begins contemplating whether or not he should be Superman again after what's happened. And so then Jonathan comes in and says, and he asks him, Clark, what's, and then he asks Clark, what's wrong? And then he says, and then Clark tells him everything about what's happened. And while at the same time, Lana and Martha once again are talking about what's wrong with Clark, and because they know that Clark is a good man, but then Jonathan says this, Clark, you of all people should know that whether or not who wears the cape and the big red S on his chest, he's still our Clark. And so now Clark is suddenly back to being Superman. He puts on the suit again, and so now um this gives Clark the confidence back to try to be Superman again. And then Lana asks, "Will you be all right?" And then Superman says, "Yes." What the what the world was that?
That was not me.
What
Leia,
was what? What did I do?
you had the movie just blasting up. We heard that.
Well, let me turn my volume down. I
Yeah,
thought it was
that
down.
that movie just whatever you're watching that blasted me out. That scared the crap out of me.
Oh, I didn't mean to do it. It's music. Okay. It was actually a sound, some music I was listening to, but I'll turn it down. So sorry, Final. I didn't mean to
Poor
break you.
final.
Yes, I didn't mean to break your concentration.
It's all right.
I'm sorry. Just had a little music, summer music going, and then I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to break your concentration. You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. That just scared the crap out of me.
Oh well, I didn't to scare you, and you were doing so well. I didn't want to break your rhythm there. My
It's all right.
apologies. My
It's all right.
apologies.
Anyway, so then
Breathe
Clark
now.
then says yes, I will be fine. But then she's just more. The only reason why Lana is asking that because even though, in spite of Clark's powers, because I don't think because she doesn't even know about Clark being about his invulnerability. She does know that he could fly because of the events prior to the events in the because of the events way earlier in this book. And so then she's just growing more and more concerned for Clark and knowing that he's going to be okay, but then reassures her. He reassures her that yes, and then actually it just says this. Actually, read this entire scene. Clark, I do not know what it's like to bend steel heel in my hands. Wait, actually, she does know that Clark is pretty strong, or run faster than a speeding bullet. But I do know what it's like to have my whole life I've planned out in my. But I do know what it's like to have my whole life planned out in my head, and then give it all, and then give have all of it yanked out from under me. That just shut up and just shut up and then says Lana, but then interrupts him and says, "Shut up and listen. You may be able to do things nobody else can do, but that doesn't make it any less hard to be hard. That doesn't make any less hard to be what you want to be. And in the case you're wondering, the boy I grew up with who was so noble and caring, he's still inside the costume today. Go make things safe, Superman." Because now Lana does know that Clark is Superman, just to make sure. Because now Lana reassures that Clark has to be Superman because she knows how that feels having your whole life being flipped upside down. Because now Superman's experienced it, Lana's experienced it. Because now Clark, because again, once again, going back to this whole cyclical nature of the seasons in this book, both having pretty similar experiences in their whole life. In fact, the scene where Lana and Clark shared the kiss before both of them start to leave from this event in the book, this happens again here. Because once again, going back to the cyclical nature of seasons, and we see this throughout this entire book. And so now Clark is now Superman again. Now he's trying to save everyone in Smallville from the flood. And is saying that, and now everyone else is trying to go. Um, everyone else is trying to find a place safe. But then they see Superman flying and saying, "Oh wait, hope has returned. Wait, hope has returned." And suddenly, because Superman was suddenly gone, so now the whole reason why Superman is trying to where he's flying is that he's trying to fly to block off the dam. And so suddenly, um, Jonathan, Martha, and Lana are suddenly trying to are actually driving through this bridge into knowing that Clark will suddenly be okay. But suddenly there's actually a crash in that bridge that where um Jonathan or no where Clark and Lana started to cross when they were just suddenly walking throughout the snow. And suddenly that starts to crash, and then suddenly the whole car comes flying. Luckily, Superman catches it and saves them, and then puts Lana and Martha to a safe place. But suddenly, Jonathan suddenly goes missing because he went flying out, and so suddenly Clark goes in to save them, try to find him, but then they actually got caught in the flood, especially alongside the dog. So then or no, the dog was actually there in the car with Lana and Martha. Just Jonathan was suddenly lost in the flood. So then Superman then goes in to try to get him, and then as soon as he gets him back to the safe island to where they're at, Jonathan suddenly wakes up and then says he's actually shows that he's actually okay, and everyone else embraces this to make sure as to everyone else is all right, that they're all there now. And so after all this had happened, now it's basically the calm before the calm after the storm. Pastor Lindquist actually says this: "My friends, I know that's I know that some of you have lost your homes, had your property damaged, but thankfully no lives were lost. I imagine we were quite lucky that Superman was in this area. In times like these, it is often difficult to remember though hardship though hardship we often find that through hardship we often find reward. That in times of crisis, how each man or woman is defined by how he or she acts. And while a tree may have its leaves, it turns brown and then goes bare. There will there will come a spring where that very same where that very same three or no the where that very same tree will burst full of blossoms, only stronger for the test of for the test of winter. We can be grateful for our seasons, no matter how cruel or harsh they may seem, for for it's only through their passage that we can truly appreciate the future." And so now Clark suddenly now finds the confidence in himself again. Everyone else in Metropolis is now suddenly safe, and now Clark's Clark goes back to being Superman, and now he flies off back to Metropolis, but not before saying goodbye to his adopted parents, especially to Lana. But then Lana also says, "Take care, Clark." So now we then see this whole icy Metropolis covered in ice after the dead of winter. Again, back in the similar shot where we see Metropolis prior in when Clark had left Smallville. Like here it is before, because it's a full page shot. Actually, you can actually see it because of the way that it is. Hold on here. Here it is. Because of this whole page here, and then suddenly we now see it as the dead of winter, as frost is still covering all the other buildings, but we do see Superman flying. But now Clark gives the whole story as to Superman stopping a flood in Smallville, which then that sells like crazy. But then Lois says, "How do you do this, Smallville? How?" But then Clark just says, "Lucky guess. Just don't know how. Lucky guess." Because she just like couldn't even believe that Clark suddenly sold more with the papers than how sold more, and then suddenly that just sold more copies. So then now we go back to Luthor back in LexCorp, and then once again the same kid from before that is now chasing off the same cat, but then the LexCorp bot tries to stop him, but then slips off because of the ice on the building, and luckily Superman saves him and actually puts him back to his home, and then suddenly tells the LexCorp bot says, "Tell
Sounds like
Luthor
they're
that
here to stay.
yep," and it says, "Tell Luthor that I'm back," and then Luthor just looks back and says, "Someday, like someday I'll." Like someday, like I will get Superman again.
Mm-hmm.
And then Superman puts the same boy down on the building. Um, and says that. Then he asks, like, "Haven't we met before?" And then he says, then he tells him that his, then he tells him yes, and asks. He even says his name is Trevor, but everyone calls me Trev. Nice meeting you, Trev. But then, but folks call, nice meeting you. Folks call me Superman. and then Superman then just flies off, and then we see the last page, which is this beautiful shot of Superman flying away.
Right off a Bruce Tim comic.
Yep, and that completes the story of Superman for all seasons. So, what'd you guys think?
Really good, man.
Very well read and what's the other word I'm looking for? Very well read and very good review. Um, is this the movie James Gunn is thinking about bringing to life? I mean, just the movie. This is the story. Excuse me.
I thought it was like something else.
Okay, I thought so. Because I was going to say that if it was, I don't have any faith in him adapting it the way the story was told.
Hmm.
Because no one has done this story yet. It's very straightforward. So it shouldn't be that difficult to do because the story is very straightforward. And it's interesting how you say that Luthor represents the cynical and Clark or Superman represents the aspirational.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of
Yeah,
it kind of
idealism versus
describes
cynicism. Yeah,
right, exactly. I agree. It kind of describes how we are now with different storytellers. How the issue is, and I'm not trying to bring it down, but it's just it just seems like today's creators seem to want to take the Luther version of a superhero tale instead of Superman's version of a Superman tale. You can still have the two be opposites, but that's what you have to show.
yeah,
You follow me? Yeah, I hope I'm not making it too
yes,
Mm-hmm.
difficult. Okay. And that's why, I said I didn't have any faith in Gunn in his adaptation of this character because I think they're embracing the cynical. And when you're dealing with Superman, you have to embrace the aspirational. And you have to show the difference between the two.
yes. Because that's always a thing with when you begin to notice with the rivals in DC Comics, like to the hero to then their sworn nemesis. Because like the aforementioned Superman and Lex Luthor, idealism versus cynicism. Batman and the Joker, it's order versus chaos. Wonder Woman and Artemis basically representing peace versus war, peace versus bloodshed. You may Even though Artemis is not much of Wonder Woman's arch sworn nemesis, Cheetah is, but she is very much more of a savage,
Mm-hmm.
like peace versus savagery, pretty much.
Who, Artemis?
No, like Wonder Woman versus Cheetah.
Okay. Yes.
And
Yes.
while
The
Artemis would
correct
be,
telling of
and while
Cheetah.
Artemis would be a bit more savage because she is very much more embracing a more barbaric side of the Amazons rather than just being a peaceful race.
Mm-hmm. What Wonder Woman's use of her powers and her strength is to protect and help the weak. She's
Yeah,
not there to start a fight.
yeah,
She's there
because she's all
to do
about
that.
extending the hand for peace before drawing out the hand of war.
Right. She fights, but she fights not to start a fight or to prove she's stronger or for a rivalry. She is there. She's only there to battle if it's used to make peace or to protect those who can't fight for themselves.
Yes,
That is the strength and power of Wonder Woman. And I just think it with today's artists, whether it be writers in the comics or filmmakers, they misinterpret that. They're just looking at, oh, well, she can kick guys in the nuts through the window. And that's
yeah,
not what that is not what she is all about. And that's not what she's supposed to represent. You know,
yeah,
to me, well, and maybe that may be, but that's what she's always represented to me. She's always represented to protect and only to fight when she has to defend herself and or defend others. Whereas the villains you mentioned, like Cheetah and the other ones that she faced, they are the total opposite of that.
yes. Because that's basically what any good rogues gallery should do. They should reflect some aspect of the hero, like what is something that they shouldn't even have, like a darker side of the, like a darker aspect of the hero. In fact, Rogues Gallery 101, if you want to do this, look at many of Batman's Rogues Gallery. The aforementioned Joker has just had Bruce deciding to give it up. He's just, because this is what happened to the Jokers, where he had so much shit stacked on top of him, he just really couldn't even take anymore. He just snapped. And so, or other Rogues Galleries in Batman's Rogues Gallery, the Riddler basically proven more of his intellect because he is smarter than Batman, but he's trying to prove everyone to the world that he's the smartest man in the room, and he's always trying to do this just to prove that he's smarter than Batman. I can beat Batman. I can beat Batman because I'm smarter than him. Or
What are you
someone
talking
like
about?
Bane of Rogues Galleries.
Um, yeah, being uh, um um you can yeah not being thing yeah, and of course his rose gallery, a scarecrow using
Yes,
fear,
yes,
yeah, using fear, very interesting,
yeah,
using
using fear in a
fear
more
as a
twisted way.
tactic.
Yeah, because
Yes.
Batman would use fear mostly as just to scare criminals away, just to make sure, mostly as just to protect others, and make sure, and just mostly as because that's what he always used. Relies on fear for the criminals he fights, just to. But Scarecrow, he uses fear in a more twisted way, just to psychologically torture you.
Yes. Yes.
And in the case of Superman,
Mhm.
Luthor, he basically almost represents the fear that if humanity would become had they always never believed in hope. In fact, even in backstories, like he never really had much like of a nurturing parents, not even a nurturing father. It really much depends on the telling of Lex Luthor, but the domineering father always stays the same in many of Luthor's origins.
Hmm. He didn't have a nurturing father the way Clark had with Jonathan Clark.
Yeah, with Jonathan Kent, yeah.
Kent, Jonathan Clark.
Oh God,
Kent.
Leah, what's wrong with you today?
I know it's been a long day.
It is definitely a long day.
Oh, it's been a very, very,
Yeah,
very busy
yeah,
day. Sorry about that.
it's okay. Uh,
Just a little goof.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's exciting. I was going to point a music in there. Go ahead.
yeah. So with Lex Luthor, Bizarro, he's a mirror. He is a He is very much of a doppelganger. He is a double archetype because he's very much like Superman, but is such an opposite because he's everything Superman is backwards. In fact, the S shield that he has, it's Superman's logo backwards.
We can
Sometimes he may
continue this
have a dot.
conversation. I'm about to head out.
Okay, good night,
Okay.
Wolf.
Good night, Wolf.
Not everybody.
Yeah, sometimes Bizarro may have a dog tag on there because but the S shield that Superman has backwards.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he
Exactly.
even talks backwards too. Not in
Yes.
the
Yeah.
backwards like in the same as Yoda, like stronger you have become, something like that. But more so as like opposites, like down means up, up means down to
Right.
him.
Right. Weak being strong to
Hmm.
him. Hmm.
Yeah,
In his image.
though I'm still surprised he's somehow even that strong, even to actual solar radiation, as the way he does, as the Clark does to our
Hmm.
norm to our sun.
Well, exactly. As I was saying, and I know, um, and I'm gonna make this quick because I don't want to hold you too long because I came in kind of late. But the only thing I was going to bring out that, I know sometimes to some people or to some people in our streams, I may come across as negative or not positive. The reason is that being that I'm a tour, I've seen these characters and known these characters for a very, very long time, and I know how these characters are supposed to be interpreted, and
Yeah.
that's why I find it very interesting that you choose this particular character for your stream for this week, with Flash opening and everything. But a lot of the
Oh
interpreters
yeah,
we're
that
coming
comes out this
down.
weekend. Does
Yes,
it?
it does. Yes, it does. It opens this weekend. It does. This is the weekend of the Flash. I am not rushing to see it. I have not
Yeah,
heard good
neither am I.
things. So I've got to be very honest. I'm very very wholeheartedly, really, truly final. I haven't liked anything coming from DC since they've been under current Warner Brothers, and that
Hmm.
includes even under Zack Snyder. Because sometimes I go back and I look back at the
Pretty much ever
movies.
since
Yeah,
2013, because that's when Man of
yeah,
Steel came out.
right. Right. That's exactly. And I have not. Excuse. I have not liked anything under his control, because Zack Snyder was a man that does not understand heroes
Yeah,
and what he has done. And if we understand heroes, we should be rejecting that. We should be rejecting that. We should, and even some, even a little bit of Nolan's Batman. Even a little bit of Nolan's Batman doesn't sit well with me. Because I know you talked
yeah,
about Scarecrow, and I was just thinking how Scarecrow's could have a little bit more imagination into the dude's costume in that first one. But what I'm trying to make is the filmmakers are not interpreting these characters as they should be. They're interpreting them the way they want them to be for them, because they don't get it and
yeah.
they don't
Just
really
like try to
understand it.
dumb it down for the audience in order to get like the simplest idea, which if you actually do that, you get what you deserve because of that. Eric July, Young Rippa, who did the Rippaverse, actually explained this in one video perfectly, where you try to dumb down your whole story or like your whole universe in the long run. Doing this for some new readers, you get what you deserve because of that. This is even the same thing that happened with Deadpool ever since he got his very own video game, where he goes from a mercenary who hides his pain behind jokes to Family Guy the superhero dressed as the Kool-Aid guy.
It's very true, and I hate that. I hate that, and it saddens my heart to see that, because the generation catching on to this are not getting the proper interpretation of who these characters need to be. And like I always said, if you love and know these characters, we should be rejecting this.
Yeah,
We should be rejecting this. I know, as you said, you mentioned Professor Geek. He's mentioned in many streams, we reject everything else when we buy a product and it malfunctions. We take it back to the store. If we get food and we order it, it's not right, we take it back, where's receipt. We should be doing the same thing with our movies and our comic books, whatever we live. If we know for Superman that is not Superman, we shouldn't be wasting our time with it. And I
yeah,
have no faith, and I don't want to bring name stream, it's great, but I have no faith in Gunn. I know Gunn wants to do a Superman. I have no faith in him doing this, because I think he absolutely will not get it right.
yeah,
And I can't sit there and go, oh, I'll just, well, this is what it is, I'll sit through it. No, I can't bring myself to do that. Just like what you did tonight. How hard is it to if they wanted to bring that to the big screen? It's not difficult. Everything is right there. It's a good story. It's a good Superman story. But
Apparently, the sad truth is not a lot of people like to read because, well, let's be honest, a lot of people can be pretty easy because get pretty lazy because it's a lot easier to watch a show or a movie than just read a book or even play a game because apparently, yeah, people are pretty lazy even today.
oh, yeah, very, very much very lazy. Yes, they don't want to read a book or go, if they want to see a film now, they don't want to pay to see a film. And I know times are tough and inflations, but now they say, well, I'll just sit at home on my computer and watch it. Not there's anything wrong with that. I don't anything wrong with that. Or if you're going to wait to streaming, but I just think that we're losing that experience of sharing the experience of being into a theater and being with an audience and enjoying that outing out. And now they're just making it too easy for them to be lazy. But you're right. They don't, nobody
Yeah,
reads as much as they used to.
yeah. What was I about to say with this? Hmm. Yeah, because this is always this because that now I remember because that's now going to be always a thing in order to do this.
Hmm.
Be productive. Like at least find some hobbies. At least find some hobbies for goodness sake. Like drawing, actually reading, whether comics, other forms of literature, to manga, to even watching. You can watch the movies for hobbies or watching shows for hobbies, but any
Sure.
other hobbies like maybe exercising or doing yoga, any other hobbies, drawing, writing. actually playing video games, always be productive. Hell, even go outside.
It's very true. And even with your films, don't wait for everything to come to streaming. Streaming has made us very lazy. If there is a film that you really would like to see, go see it.
Yeah,
Don't just stay locked into your dorm or your apartment or your home. If you can, get out some fresh air, go see it, sniff in the air of some nice popcorn, go with the friends and some friends, and just share your common love for whatever genre or characters or films that you enjoy. Just share that common love. You'll go out in public and get back
yeah,
into it in doing
yeah.
it.
Just don't wait for your purpose to come. You gotta get straight to it. Just if you're just gonna be there waiting, don't just be sitting there waiting. You gotta get straight to it. Do it. Like just like what Superman did in this story. Like he didn't have to wait for another spring in order to come back. It took Lana and his adopted parents, Jonathan and Martha, to finally start being Superman again. Now finding out who he actually really is. But
Exactly.
but that actually about does it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you saw, click like and subscribe, and make sure you share with your family and friends, and make sure you ring that notification bell. That way you get notified of our latest videos. And this will be the last episode of Comic Studies for a while. It's not going to be gone forever. It's just going to be laying to rest for quite some time now. But I already have planned, one comic planned after this one, because after this one, episode 8 will be. I can get it. Will be The Marvels by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross. So, yes, for the very first time ever in Comic Studies, I'm finally talking about Marvel Comics.
Yay. Well, we look forward to it.
Yeah, it won't be for a while though, but that will be the next episode. So this first set of 7 episodes has been a bunch of DC comics. So now the next set of 7 will be a bunch of Marvel. Will be a bunch of Marvel comics. So yeah. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching. This is Final Fantasy Fan 12 signing off. Oh, Leia, say goodbye.
Oh, this is Leia Plus Size, your Lady of Valor. Thank you all for joining Final in this reading, and I hope you all have a very good weekend.
Thank you. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching. This is Final Fantasy Fan 12 signing off, and remember, may the light forever